I'm MARiMAri. I make hyperpop, kind of alternative pop, in the Northwest. And I just released my debut EP, Little Bit Danger Zone.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about your sound. It's really interesting hearing about all your different influences. I feel like they cover like a really broad range of the pop genre, like from hyperpop to like J-pop and then like 2000s pop. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've brought all of those influences together to sort of define your own unique sound within the genre.
Yeah, so I kind of combined like my three like biggest chapters of my life. So like I grew up in Japan listening to J-pop, and then as a teenager I like became emo. So that was a bit of a change. And then as an adult I kind of stayed more towards like Charlie XCX and artists like Ashnikko and people like that. And it was all just like a big mix of everything, and it was quite an easy process. Like the Harry, who I write with, also has the exact same music taste as me, so it kind of came really naturally and easily. um but yeah, it's kind of steering towards more of like the hyperpop clubby kind of music right now, but I will always like have like my emo influences tucked away somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like your sound has like obviously it's very sugary sweet and hyperpop, but there is kind of like an edge in there still.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I initially like aimed for when I started the project, was to like make it accessible to kind of all the audiences that I I am as well. So like I kind of try and cater to like my emo besties online and kind of more club goers, also like Y2K enjoyers, everything. It's yeah, all my favorites put together.
I feel like the themes of your music does that as well in a way. Like you cover such a broad spectrum of experience within your music. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so with this EP, I kind of wanted to cover all aspects of kind of being a teenage girl, because I wrote it when I was 18, 19, that kind of time, so about 2 years ago. And like it talks about sexuality, which is something that I was discovering as a teenage girl, and also grief, mixed in with like falling in love and like everything, all those big topics. I kind of have it in my head that each song represents something different. I also just love talking about like um, womanhood, sisterhood as a concept. I just find so much comfort in other, not exclusively female, but like queer as well artists, and the people that I work with are of that community as well. So I just wanted it to be quite a like inclusive space and talking about topics that um, similar people can relate to.
Something that I found really interesting, I've been talking to a few different people about pop as a genre recently, is how the genre of pop in itself is really associated with the teenage girl as a concept. Like, you know, when you think about pop, you think about like sort of like Y2K, like pop stars, like posters on walls and all those sort of things. And yeah, I was just curious about like how you find the genre as I guess almost like a tool in itself to deliver those themes around teenage girlhood.
I mean, pop is for everyone, but I think it's definitely catered towards like younger audiences. And I think for me, listening and writing to that genre was super important for me to connect with like my younger self. And yeah, I just think it's a really like experimental, fun place. Like even writing it, you kind of feel like the kind of excitement of like growing up, all just kind of crammed into a song. And yeah, it's interesting because the Harry that I write with is in fact not teenage girl, he's a gay man, so there was some crossover with kind of that teenage girl experience and like him as like someone who has surrounded himself and found comfort in like teenage girls growing up, and they were his best friends, and obviously we're best friends as well, so that kind of bridging those like two communities within like pop music is like so common, and I kind of loved that collaboration between us for the project. And yeah, it's such an interesting question. I feel like there's no like right answer, or yeah.
I mean, it's such a good point in terms of the way those two communities merge. Like even your references, like if you think about people like Kesha and Charlie XCX, like they're such like core like icons of like the queer community.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's so interesting how that kind of like pink glittery sound as well as aesthetic translates across like those different communities.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find that writing within the genre of pop, especially when you're navigating those heavier themes of things like grief, which you wouldn't necessarily associate with, like hyper pop, how do you find that, like translating those quite somber experiences to, like a more fun sound?
Yeah, it was definitely a weird one trying to kind of give it the weight that the topic has, but still kind of sugarcoat it with like a lot of those hyper pop sounds. So Ida Bacho, the song about grief, was a direct kind of diary entry or a letter that I wrote lyrically, but we decided to, if you just look at the lyrics, I feel like it's very like singer-songwritery. And if someone just read it, they probably wouldn't think, oh, that's like a hyperpop song. But I think we kind of had more fun in the production, adding like a lot of like synthy plucks and rises and stuff like the key like hyperpop elements, and left it to the production to do that work and to leave the lyrics as like a story. That was the perfect balance for me personally, to be able to still have it on the EP and it feel like it lives in the same world, but kind of have a contrast and making it more vulnerable compared to the rest of the songs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So within your process, does the kind of lyricism come first and then the production come later?
Interesting. Usually that song is the exception, actually. Usually the track is made and then we write around the track, because pop is such like a melody driven genre for me. Like having a strong like even if it's not a track, even like a bass line or chords, it's definitely melody first in the writing process and then lyrics following that. And we've sort of come up with a new concept for the next EP, which is to like work around song titles to keep, the lyrical palette in the same space. So I think we did that with Aerosol as well, which is on the first EP. Like the song was written around the concept of an aerosol can, because it was kind of like a weird niche kind of song title. I really wanted to kind of explore that, and it's usually definitely the track comes first because it's like a production melody kind of led space.
I love that idea of like a lyrical palette as something to like dip in and out of, and it's made me think just generally about, I guess, like your approach as an artist feels really all encompassing. Like your visuals feel incredibly tied to the sound, and like as you say, like each track is really melded to the lyrical content, even though they all exist in the same genre. What in terms of your songwriting process, does it cross different disciplines? Like do you have almost like visuals attached to the way that you make each of the tracks?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like visuals are so important to me. And when we were writing each song, I used to in the session make Pinterest boards at the same time, which was, it sounds like a waste of time, but I think generally speaking, like that, it's a great way, especially with co-writing, for you and the other person to connect and kind of visually see what's in front of us. And yeah, those two just come hand in hand. I'm often thinking about like covers even before the song's finished and stuff. So it's definitely like having like a cohesive like body of visuals is important within tracks, but for like the whole project as well. Like it's super kind of visual led, as a lot of pop acts are, but yeah, definitely a lot of like sparkles and heels and lip gloss and stuff like that all put together.
I love it. And like you've touched there a little bit about collaboration, and like I'd love to just know more about how that process has been for you, especially navigating those like really personal themes and like you say, having to like share that feeling and vision with someone else.
Yeah, so it helps that everyone that I collaborate with are like my best friends. So there's no like explaining that has to be done, like, oh, this has happened, you know. It's all just kind of, we've all grown together, especially because we like all go to the same uni. So like going in as like a 18-year-old just moved out from home kind of vibe to writing like in our like as like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Like we've kind of gone through the stages of being a teenager into adulthood together. So like a lot of our experiences are shared. We've all fallen in love and we've all had to go through tricky, you know, grief and whatnot. And so it's kind of definitely led by me, but everyone has their own input within songs and their experience, which I love, because a lot of the time I'm talking about like best friends, and in Infamous and Dangerous it's all about like strong female friendships in the big city, and that's all stuff that we've gone through. So it's definitely like, I love my collaborators, and also my boyfriend mixes and masters the song, so it's literally just all kept in this like circle, all very DIY. So yeah, it's I wouldn't like change it for the world. And even though we're graduating in a couple months, we do plan on still all of us working together, whether it's through Zoom or if I go down to London or whatnot. Yeah, it's definitely been like, they're definitely my people.
That's so gorgeous, and it's really nice because it's like when you were talking at the start about how pop for you is something that like is like almost like a community builder in how it like ties people's experiences together. It's really nice to know that the pop that you're making is like has that community almost like infused within it.
No, completely. Like it was a project started by all of us, and I just, yeah, no, it's completely like DIY, like I said. I think pops, it's obviously such a big genre, and a lot of budget and money goes into like all the big pop acts. But I just love that we could do everything from our bedroom, and like in all the photo shoots were done in like my bathroom, my kitchen, like my bedroom. Like there's no room that hasn't been used. So yeah, no, it was such a like a fun just project for all of us. Obviously, and going forward as well. So yeah.
I'd be really interested to know what your experience has been like moving to Liverpool for Lipper, and just like generally like your experience of navigating the local music scene.
Yeah, so I moved from York, which has not much going on musically. So going to Liverpool was like super exciting for me. I came straight out of like sixth form doing like classical music, so it was a bit different. But yeah, no, coming to Liverpool was the best decision that I could have made. I will say that the music scene is relatively still slightly conservative in terms of like it champions bands, especially because of like the Beatles influence, and I guess that's just how the city's built. But I think to begin with, I felt like it's hard to do pop music here because like where are the venues? I don't know. And a lot of like I saw a lot of like the media magazines and all those stuff covering a lot of stories about bands, and often like all male bands, which is completely like, I still like, a lot of my friends are in those bands, so they're gonna be like, why are you saying this? But just kind of finding my kind of the other kind of gigging musicians in the same genre was hard. Like I had people to collaborate with, but I didn't feel like I had people who were also doing the same like shows as me in the same city. So yeah, that's been a little tricky, but I feel like as I've become more sure of myself, like a lot of like DJ venues have been up for kind of the hyperpop scene as well. Obviously there's Manchester right next door to us, which is great for like the club scene and like gay village and all that stuff that I want to explore going on. Um but yeah, no, it's Liverpool was, it's definitely a great um for me, like a great base to have. I do want to move to London, but not quite yet. I'm not done yet with Liverpool, so yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like a conversation that's happening quite a lot at the moment is about the lack of capacity for pop musicians in Liverpool. Like I don't know if you've heard, but George Bortoli, who's actually also on the podcast, has set up like an initiative to support pop musicians in Liverpool. And it's really interesting for me because like you referenced the Beatles as like the baseline for the indie piece, like four-piece boy band, but they're a pop. They invented the genre of pop. So it's really interesting to me that Liverpool as a city doesn't cater towards pop and also to genres that are, like you say, kind of pushing on boundaries. Because that's where the Beatles' success and notoriety derives from, is that sort of innovation at the edge of existing genres. So I really love to see artists who are like almost like not conforming to like the sort of expectation of like indie singer-songwriter style setups, because like it actually feels, if you're thinking about the heritage of the city, I think if anything like that pop, hyper pop, experimental, alternative music really is like what we should be embracing if we're thinking about Liverpool's heritage as a music space.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, I think there's definitely more that's like kind of coming from that, pop in the pool, like events like that. Like, I feel like people are noticing that there's kind of a gap in what Liverpool is pushing, despite it being like such a great like pop city, because the Beatles were originally, yeah, like a pop group. Um, yeah, there's been I've played obviously like the O2 in Liverpool, which was such like a great opportunity because it was a support slot. So it meant that like, I could meet like real fans of like pop music because it was a support tour of a pop act from elsewhere. Yeah, no, I feel like we need more alternative spaces and pop spaces in Liverpool. I really just want to take like Future Yard from the Wirral and just pop it in the city centre because I feel like that's the exact venue that we need, but hopefully soon.
Do you feel like within like the conversations you've had about why there aren't spaces like putting pop musicians on the lineup, do you think that's maybe about like, I don't know, like just the types of lineups or the feel of those venues, or is it about like infrastructure maybe in terms of like how artists are supported?
Potentially, I'd say that like literally even just looking at by like venue setups, for example, like the Jacaranda obviously is like a corner pretty much. It's not even like a stage. And like I feel like with stuff like lighting considered and sound considered, these venues just can't accommodate for like tracks and loads of DIs and all the tech stuff that I'm not really familiar with. And just like, I with pop, I feel like a good light show is like make or break. And places like Future Yard and O2 offer that, but a lot of these smaller venues where like beginner artists start playing at, it's super hard to translate your vision as an artist your live sound on these spaces that I feel like a lot of artists shy away from it. Like I got offered to play at the Jacaranda, but I just felt like that just wasn't for me. And that's someone else's cup of tea, and I love watching my friends play the Jack, but it just wasn't for me, and I didn't think it would do my songs justice because of like the actual building. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's something that I'm glad people are kind of advocating for, because like you say, it actually cuts you off from opportunities when you're at a stage where like you have the music, you have the presence, like you even have like the performance like set up and ready to go, but if the venues who are approaching you like literally don't have the infrastructure to provide like the technical setup that you need, then like you're behind your peers who can just like rock up with a guitar and start performing.
That's exactly how I felt. And like there's, you know, a lot of open mics that happen in Liverpool, but that's also I feel like not really my scene, which I'm okay with because like, you know, we've got to keep some spaces for certain people. But yeah, it's just equipment wise as well. It's just an absolute technical nightmare sometimes. Yeah, just more kind of like, yeah, just more like availability for people with tracks and synth basses and these electronic drums would be exciting, and definitely like people I think would really like that in Liverpool, but it's just a bit of time probably, and then we should be there. It's definitely nearly there, so
Yeah. Like there's clearly an appetite for it, both in terms of musicians and then people in the music scene who, yeah, it's like if you think people are from Liverpool going to Future Yard and like trekking over the water and going to Manchester to find these events, like there's clearly the financial appetite for venues to start supporting these things. I think like what's really interesting to me about that generally is like how you as a pop artist have really quite like a multidisciplinary approach to making music. Like you talking about visuals before, and obviously like the way you produce is like, you know, you do have that almost singer-songwriter approach to vulnerable lyricism, and then you have like almost like a alternative approach to like music production, but then it transcends that, and it's also about like performance and like light show and all of these different things. And yeah, like I don't really like there's not necessarily a question attached to that, but I find it really interesting how you as an artist almost have to go beyond what maybe is traditionally expected of musicians.
completely. Yeah, I think I'm a perfectionist through and through. And it's like a good thing and a bad thing. Like I very much like to take on everything myself because sometimes it can get, you know, I maybe that's just me being like overprotective of my like art, but like with like outfits and lighting, I've got like my own light spec that I did. I've got outfits that I've made myself and props that I've like got from charity shops here and there, and also like making the music, which is obviously like the core part, running socials and everything. Like I it's a lot and I get stressed by it, but also if someone was to kind of want to do it for me, I think I'd be like no. So it's very much like I like being in control of the whole visual sonic world. um and I do plan on going on like that still in the future, even if big opportunities happen. I kind of like being authentic and DIY and all those stuff. So yeah, it's a lot, but I think a lot of artists are taking on the same way now. Like independent musicians are championed a bit more. So I think yeah, it's the way forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you was about the role that fashion plays for you in terms of like your music, but also just like your, I guess, like stage presence and the way that you perform. Like, yeah, like, you know, obviously you've spoken a bit about the challenges of that, but I'd love to know just generally like what your approach is to translating something which is quite a digital sound into like an in-person performance space.
Yeah, so there's a couple aspects. Obviously, first off, like the so I use tracks which have everything minus if I'm gonna get Stefan, who plays with me on stage, synth bass or electronic, like a drum pad. So, and we have all like the specific samples that are in the original track loaded onto these instruments, so it sounds how I would want it to sound. It's very laptop based, so we take a lot of like precautions to make sure nothing fails, like do not disturb is on, they're charged, the internet's off, everything like that. I've got like a little checklist. So that's super important. Then obviously there's the aesthetic part of it. So I often wear like dresses that I've made myself. I got into sewing. I mean, I've always kind of been like a crafty person, but my grandma, who used to be a seamstress, she used to make like wedding dresses down to like clothes for me, clothes even for my teddy bears and stuff. Like she was on it, and she Idabachos about her, and she passed she passed during Freshers Week, so just at the start of my first year at Lipper, and I bought a sewing machine like 2 months after that, and my mum always jokes that like her spirit is just like migrated into me because I immediately started making dresses and it came really naturally to me, and it's a great way for me to like decompress, because music's kind of like a bit of a job now, so it's great to have that other hobby that's equally as creative. And so in my live set I tend to wear those kind of baby doll-esque dresses that I've made, and combining it with other props. Like I have these like mesh sparkly pink fabrics that I drape all over the stage, and it's probably not great for health and safety, but I do it anyway. And I have these like little bows that I put on my mic stand and stuff. So I want it to kind of, even before I started playing for an audience, to know what it's gonna sound like, I guess, even from the start. And I always go to the light tech and I'm like, please do pink lights. So it's all like a big package.
I love that. And I mean, even just in terms of like Girlbands is a sort of like a brand, I really relate to, sparkly pink fabrics being thrown everywhere. That's definitely like
Exactly.
within my world and my understanding of like production. And it's something I actually really wanted to ask you about, was like femininity is such like a core theme within your music, and I guess generally like the aesthetics around you as a musician. And obviously like Where Are the Girl Bands, a lot of it talks about gendered experiences of music. So I just wondered, like what your experience has been like of navigating those themes within your music.
Before I go on, I just want to say, love Where Are the Girl Bands. Like it's just exactly what Liverpool needed. And when I saw your Instagram page, like straight away I was like, yeah, this is perfect. But so similar vibe, like with a lot of like femininity spoken about in my music. Like I've always felt very sure of myself as like a feminist growing up, in like I was in a household that was kind of very conservative, so I was very much an advocate for that, even as a young teenager, just even within conversations within my house. So it was always something I really wanted to express musically. And it's I'm also a producer, and there's not many women who are producing. Well, that there is, but it's definitely growing as we speak. So I really wanted to be like a strong kind of independent woman in my music, and that to come across in a way that's really genuine, and just as an experience as a woman to really be shown through my sound and the choices that I make as an artist. I'm always very kind of proud about like what I believe in, whether it's sexuality or gender or everything like that. And it's so important to me. I want people to feel included and championed, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something really powerful about really specifically claiming femininity as part of your sound within, like, you know, with sound engineering being a very male dominated field. Probably my last question, just because we're running out of time on the Zoom call. I wanted to ask also in terms of how you incorporate elements of your identity, and also, like, you know, it's beautiful hearing about sewing and fashion, I guess, in that way, how your heritage is like a really big part of your identity as a musician, about I guess like the bilingual nature of your music and how you bring in Japanese influence into your music too.
I tend to like to keep my music quite mainstream, accessible to people that are like literally physically around me in the UK, but at the same time, like I grew up in Japan, and that's a big part of like even like what I look like, what I sound like, and everything like that. And it's a way of me being closer to my mum as well, who's like my absolute rock. Like she's the best, and so I always like to throw in like Japanese line or two in my songs. I do it in Itabacho, I do it in No Regrets and Aerosol as well. So it's like such a key part. And if it's not physically in Japanese, I like to have words like Harajuku or like I think there's sushi as a lyric in Infamous and Dangerous, which I don't know how that happened, but it's very much just kind of reminding people like where I'm from, because ultimately I'm writing the songs for me, and that's kind of like where all my inspiration comes from. It's like my heritage and places like that. So yeah, I want it to still be, you know, people be able to sing along with all like the English lyrics, but definitely writing in both languages is what comes naturally to me.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, and I feel like, to sort of wrap up your interview, I feel like the feeling I've got from talking to you is just how much you champion, yeah, like all of the different elements of your identity and your heritage and the communities that you're part of. And yeah, it's just, I feel like the genre of music that you make really beautifully encompasses like the eclectic nature of that and, you know, your life.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I, I'm just kind of very blessed to have people around me who believe in that vision that I've always had, even as a kid. It's just now come to life. So thank you so much. It was such a lovely interview talking to you.
Of course. And where can people find you and listen to your music?
Yeah, so you can follow my Instagram, which is MARiMAri, or TikTok MARiChan. And on Spotify, it's just MARiMAri. Everything's capitals except for the I's. And go stream Little Bitch, Little Danger Zone.